Thank you for joining my virtual presentation of my thesis. My name is Sabrina Cheri. I'm a senior at the University of Central Arkansas, and my thesis title is Introducing Korean Studies into the University of Central Arkansas Curriculum to supplement the development of an Asian Studies major program. This is to satisfy the requirements of the Honors College at UCA, as well as departmental honors for the spring semester of 2022. Before I begin describing my thesis, I wanted to explain the who, what, why, and how of my thesis. So again, my name is Sabrina Cheri. I am a senior graduating with a Bachelor of Arts in Linguistics TESOL, and I have an overarching interest in Korean studies and Asian studies as a whole. But the what of my thesis is integrating Korean studies into UCA's current Asian studies minor in order to develop a Bachelor of the Arts in Asian studies here. I'm doing this because this is to help UCA's mission of global citizenship and diversity, as well as modernizing the Asian Studies program. And I'm doing this by first completing research on Korean studies and why it's important. And the second part, the larger part of my thesis, is an actual proposal for the Bachelor of the Arts. To highlight the importance and influence of Korea, I believed it was necessary to detail the country's historical, economic, and social achievements. Firstly, after the World Wars and the Korean War, South Korea and North Korea were impoverished nations and technically third world countries. But South Korea, within only 2 to 3 decades, rose and became a global leader. Their economy skyrocketed. The split Koreas, North and South, are prevalent in the United States with diplomacy, whether that's an allyship or with diplomatic tensions. But from an economical standpoint, Korea is host to global giants such as Samsung, LG, and Hyundai, all of which are big names in the US and contribute to trade between the United States and South Korea. In 2022, it's difficult to not know about the rise in Korean pop culture around the world, with musical groups such as BTS and movies such as Parasite. Korean pop culture is rising not only around the globe, but especially in the United States. Yasue Kuwahara, the author of the book Korean Wave, Korean Popular Culture in Global Context, found that over 40% of survey takers on a Korean pop culture website are taking courses or studying Korean. 16% tried Korean food, and 43% make at least 2 purchases of Korean music or drama content per month. In a report by 2 members of the Modern Language Association, Korean was mentioned 28 times in the report. These mentionings were all in the theme of increasing popularity and enrollment. So in certain analyses, Korean was the only language that saw increase in enrollment in institutions of higher education in the United States. Haruo Shirane also said that Korean is one of the fastest growing foreign languages in the United States. And as far as other institutions in the United States, Korean studies are thriving at universities. They are succeeding. There is positive enrollment, but there's an absence in Korean studies in the southern region of the United States. After finding support for Korean studies in general, I moved into the task of formatting an Asian studies major program. To summarize the central ideas of the proposal, I included these 3 quotes from the introduction. First, through a variety of courses across multiple disciplines, Asian studies majors would be exposed to the ways in which Asian nations have been and continue to be deeply connected to larger global processes of economic and cultural exchange. Number 2, the major program in Asian studies would aim to produce graduates who are thoughtful, well-rounded, and well-prepared to function in an increasingly globalized world. And thirdly, the University of Central Arkansas has the potential to become a pioneer in the pursuit of Asian studies for a state where substantial Asian studies curriculum is lacking in the face of past, current, and prospective student interests. So I wanted to highlight these as the central idea of this proposal. The components of the proposal were inspired by a proposal that was actually submitted to the University of Florida. The components are as follows: first being the mission, 2, need and student projections, 3, anticipated curriculum, 4, faculty, 5, quality, and 6, resources, with the subheadings below them. Global citizenship and 3 pillars of diversity are known to be UCA's overarching mission for many of its initiatives. So with these missions in mind, I applied my Korean Studies and Asian Studies project. And we see that the three pillars of diversity are recruitment and retention, support, and knowledge. Recruitment and retention pursues a diverse faculty, staff, and student body. Support pursues innovation and being responsive to diverse needs. Knowledge pursues interaction and understanding for a global community. So Korean studies can easily help these three pillars of diversity, especially in conjunction with Asian studies at the University of Central Arkansas. They are known to be fields that are diverse as far as student enrollment and faculty, and they contribute to these goals of being responsive to diverse needs and an understanding for a global community. In 2018, Dr. Zach Smith, who is the program coordinator for Asian Studies, as well as my partner for this proposal, wrote a review in which he wrote, quote, "When combined with the new, more flexible minor curriculum developed last year, the Asian Studies program is poised for continued growth," end quote. This statement has proven true as Asian Studies at UCA has experienced curriculum development, student and community outreach increase, and institutional partnerships. So Asian Studies is thriving at UCA, but it's being held back as it is only a minor program at the moment. The first part of need and student projections that I looked into was graduate demand. So some careers that want Asian Studies majors are those with the titles of researcher, teacher, diplomat, international communicator, professional analyst, among others. So Asian Studies is not only a diverse and interdisciplinary field, but it leads to diverse and interdisciplinary career paths. So one Asian Studies degree can lead you to these multiple pathways in your career. We also wanted to compare our current Asian Studies program to the Asian Study programs of our peer institutions and our aspirant institutions. So these are officially listed on UCA's website. And after going through their university websites, I found that for both peer and aspirant institutions, faculty are pulled from other departments. So this means that faculty are not solely devoted to Asian Studies. They're typically pulled from departments such as art, history, sociology, among others. For peer institutions, there are roughly 15 faculty per Asian Studies program. And for aspirant institutions, there are roughly 18 faculty per program. For language requirements, peer institutions only had language requirements for 2 of the institutions, and there were only language requirements at 1 aspirant institution. And understandably, but what was disappointing was that Asian Studies programs at both peer institutions and aspirant institutions mainly focused on China and Japan. And this is a trend, but it's missing the modernized aspect of Korea also being a global leader and being used as a diverse aspect of these Asian Studies programs. For program diversity, Asian Studies at UCA currently sees 25 students in the program. The majority of those students are female identifying, with 7 of these students being ethnic minorities. This is great compared to the entire student body as a whole. However, the faculty of Asian Studies is disproportionately white and male, which is not in conjunction, or it does not mirror the other departments of the university, whereas they are more diverse. So there are aspects where Asian Studies at UCA is diverse, and Asian Studies at UCA is not necessarily as diverse as expected or as wanted. So the projected enrollment for Asian Studies at UCA, we were not able to do a survey. However, we did look into existing organizations on campus that presented interest in Korean Studies and Asian Studies as a whole. There is Korean Club on UCA's campus as a student organization, and Japanese Club for the entire Asian Studies interest. Korean Club has 108 members, Japanese Club has 89 members. And both of these organizations are well known on campus for their large and small scale events, They have been known for their educational and entertaining activities. UCA's Community Language School has reached out to Korean Club in the past year for Korean language classes offered to the community, not just UCA students. So Korean Club partnered with the Community Language School in the fall of 2021 and saw an enrollment of 30 students for this class. The following spring, this spring of 2022, 15 students joined that same class that was offered in fall, and 6 students joined a second class that was offered. As far as students returning from fall to spring, there were 6 of them. The most creative part of my thesis was the anticipated curriculum section, where I had to list out courses and how these courses would fulfill requirements for the Bachelor of Arts in Asian Studies. As you can see in the top left, I included a course legend with labels such as an asterisk, a double asterisk, a caret, and a tilde. These are to make the reading of the courses a little bit easier for comparing what will be different with the Bachelor of the Arts versus what is currently available with the minor. So for core requirements, there are 15 total semester hours required, with the 5 classes on the left, the capstone being the very last class that Asian Studies majors would complete. There are major electives. 9 semester hours in major electives are required. So far there are 24 semester hours required. And for the remaining 12 semester hours to complete the major, we wanted to divide into geographical regions. Currently, this is not a final decision, but for the purpose of this presentation, I will present what I currently have. So for the Chinese track, we have all electives that contribute to education about China. You can see there are plenty that have tildes, meaning that they are study abroad programs. And for the Bachelor of the Arts in Asian Studies, we wanted to require at least 2 language courses at the 2000 level or above. Excuse me. The Japanese track is similar, however, has fewer classes as UCA has more Chinese faculty and Chinese courses available. There aren't many differences for the current Japanese courses. However, the addition of perhaps 2 classes would help to diversify the courses that are available. For the Korean track, we do not have any Korean courses so far, so this is an entirely new section of curriculum. It mirrors mostly the Japanese track, and you can see I had 1 course in the Japanese track, but 2 here that are just kind of example courses that could be adopted into UCA's curriculum. The titles and anticipated content borrowed from Stanford University. For credit transfer and UCA collaboration, I looked into our partner institutions abroad. We have 18 international partnerships only in Asia, 14 of those being in China, 2 in Taiwan, 1 in Korea, and 1 in Japan. For this specifically, I wrote these down with the purpose of students from UCA going on exchange to international institutions in Asia would be able to complete courses that mirror the content expected of Asian Studies graduates here. The credit transfer would be very simple, and there wouldn't be much asked of the other institutions. The only thing that is required is communication and perhaps resources for study abroad. If you excuse me, I just need to take a sip of water. For department collaboration, as I had stated before, many of the faculty are pulled from other departments on campuses. So we already have faculty from all of the departments listed in the bottom right. We would not need to hire new faculty in these departments unless desired later on. For the current faculty that contribute to Asian Studies at UCA, we have 10 faculty members. 90% of those, their highest degree is a PhD, with the remaining currently pursuing their PhD. 90% hold the rank of associate or higher, with the remaining being a visiting lecturer. And the relevant expertise are within all of these different aspects of sociology, China, Japan, philosophy, religion, anthropology, political science, and history. For quality, I wanted to highlight some of the potential career paths. These are just fields of study that Asian studies graduates can go into after they've received their degree. So much like the career paths from earlier with researchers, diplomats, etc., these are specific fields of study or career fields that you may find graduates of Asian studies. For the learning outcome and program quality, we wanted to put some expectations for graduates of Asian studies, those being the ability to apply knowledge of Asian culture, history, and philosophy to relevant situations, and introductory proficiency to one or more Asian languages. These would be measured by formative and summative assessments, as well as a comprehensive analysis from their capstone portfolio. One of the best ways to ensure program quality is through questionnaires for both current students and alumni, and of course, to continue with alumni contact. At this moment, 80% of the proposed Asian Studies major is already complete and available at UCA. The bulk of the remaining resources are the Korean courses and the hiring of an estimated 2 to 3 faculty members for those missing courses. So the majority of what is needed is already here. In conclusion, it's safe to predict that interest in Korean studies will remain consistent as factors such as Korean popular culture, music, dramas, and Korean studies within Asian studies continue to influence the United States. So this interest in integration in Korean studies, combined with the pre-established collaborative resources at UCA, are the bread and butter for the Asian studies major that is potentially available in the future. With what has already been compiled here in this thesis, 75% of the requirements from the Arkansas Department of Higher Education are already completed and can be used in the future to develop this degree plan at UCA. And again, I wanted to include my information as well as my email for contact. Thank you again so much for taking the time to listen to my thesis presentation online. I am still working on it currently, and I appreciate your audience and your feedback. Thank you so much.